I made that company millions, built it from the basement of my apartment into a tech empire. But when the new VP walked in, he fired me his first day. What he didn't know? I wasn't just an employee, I was the ghost in the machine. And he was about to find out. I remember my first day at TechCore Solutions like it was yesterday. The basement apartment I'd converted into my office was littered with empty energy drink cans and code printouts. I was 26, fresh out of a failed startup, and desperate for a chance to prove myself. That morning, I dressed in my only decent shirt, the same one I'd worn to 3 interviews, and walked into that gleaming corporate tower feeling like an imposter. "Junior developer," the HR lady said, barely looking up from her clipboard. "You'll be working night shifts to start." Perfect. I preferred the quiet anyway. While everyone else was at happy hours and team lunches, I was diving deep into TechCore's infrastructure, discovering flaws they didn't even know existed. The first 6 months, I worked like a man possessed. 80-hour weeks became my normal. I skipped meals, forgot birthdays, and lost touch with old friends. My girlfriend left, saying she felt like she was dating a ghost. But something magical was happening in those late-night coding sessions. I was building systems that didn't just work. They revolutionized how TechCore operated. My crowning achievement came on a rain-soaked Tuesday at 3 a.m. I'd been wrestling with our client data optimization problem for weeks. Everyone else had given up, calling it impossible. That night, in a caffeine-induced haze, I cracked it. I built an algorithm that reduced processing time by 70% and increased accuracy to 99.97%. The next morning, I quietly deployed it. Within hours, our biggest client, who'd been threatening to leave, renewed their contract for 3 years. The CEO, David, found me in the break room 2 days later. "Ashton," he said, his hand on my shoulder, "I don't know exactly what you did, but our client retention just hit record highs." From that day forward, I wasn't just another developer. David would call me into private meetings, seek my input on major decisions. I became his secret weapon, the one he could rely on when the board was breathing down his neck. But here's the thing about being indispensable while staying invisible. People start to forget you exist, even as they depend on you. I preferred it that way. No office politics, no posturing for promotions. Just me, my code, and the quiet satisfaction of keeping this company afloat. My apartment filled with awards I never picked up. Bonuses I rarely spent. Life was good, stable. The technical challenges kept getting more complex, and I loved every minute of solving them. Then came that Friday afternoon in January, the day everything changed, the day Jacob Sterling walked through those glass doors and decided to remind me that in corporate America, it doesn't matter how valuable you are if nobody sees you coming. I remember the day's weather because every detail from that morning is burned into my brain with perfect clarity. Freezing rain hitting the windows, creating rivers on the glass that blurred the city skyline. I was in my usual corner of the office, the one by the server room where most people didn't bother me. A notification popped up. All hands meeting, 9 a.m. sharp. That was unusual. David never called surprise meetings. The moment Jacob Sterling walked into that conference room, the air changed. He moved like a predator surveying new territory. Designer suit, crisp enough to cut glass, shoes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His resume had been circulating for weeks. Stanford MBA, McKinsey consultant, executive positions at Fortune 500 companies. The kind of guy who spoke in acronyms and measured success in metrics I'd never heard of. "Change is coming," he announced, as if the words themselves were revolutionary. His presentation was all flash. Buzzwords like synergy and value-added propositions that meant absolutely nothing to actual productivity. I felt my stomach tightening with each slide, each promise of streamlining for excellence. David sat in the corner, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Then Sterling noticed me. Really noticed me for the first time. "You," he said, pointing with the laser pointer still in his hand. "What's your role here?" "System architect and back-end optimization," I answered, keeping my voice steady despite the spotlight. Sterling's eyes narrowed. "Back-end?" He pulled up my personnel file on the projector. My title still read Senior Developer 3 from my last promotion. "Your code standards are questionable at best. I've reviewed some of your work. Sloppy. Uncommented. No proper documentation." My face burned. The architecture he was criticizing powered 90% of our core operations. Those sloppy systems had saved the company millions. "Sir, if you'd let me explain the logic behind—" "That's exactly the problem." Sterling slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. "In modern enterprise, we don't operate on individual logic. We operate on standardized, scalable, enterprise-grade solutions." He turned to David. "This is what I was talking about. The old guard holding us back with their basement-developed Band-Aids." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly in the suddenly silent room. "Basement-developed? I've revolutionized every major system in this company. The optimization algorithms alone have— Have what? Complicated our transition to cloud-based solutions? Made the company dependent on a single point of failure?" Sterling's face was red now, veins visible on his temples. "Gentlemen, this is exactly the cowboy coding mentality we need to eliminate." The room was spinning. I looked at David, silently pleading for him to intervene, to remember all the times I'd pulled his company out of the fire. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Sterling pushed a folder across the table toward me. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. "Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. We'll be transitioning to standardized platforms that don't require specialized knowledge." My hands shook as I picked up the folder. This was how 5 years ended? Without warning, without investigation, without even a chance to defend myself? "You have no idea what I've built here, what I maintain, what keeps this place. Security will escort you out. You have 30 minutes to collect personal items. Company property remains here." Sterling was already turning away, dismissing me like a subordinate who'd overstayed their welcome. The next 29 minutes were a blur. Colleagues I'd mentored avoided eye contact. The systems I'd built hummed quietly in the background, oblivious to their creator's exile. At my desk, I gathered my few personal items: a photo of my grandmother, my worn copy of The Art of Unix Programming, my collection of exotic energy drinks. As security escorted me past the reception desk, I saw my reflection in the glass doors, no longer the invisible hero of TechCore Solutions, but a stranger being walked out with purpose. My hands balled into fists inside my jacket pockets, not in anger, but in determination. I'd protected this company for 5 years. Now they were about to learn exactly what that protection had kept at bay. "Good luck, Mr. Sterling," I whispered, as the rain soaked through my shoes. "You're going to need it." The first sign came exactly 72 hours after my departure. I was sitting in a coffee shop across from TechCore's building, nursing my third espresso of the morning, when Sarah from accounting texted me. "Ash, the payroll system is showing weird errors. Nothing we can't handle, just thought you'd want to know." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The payroll system wasn't just weird. It was a house of cards I'd carefully maintained for 3 years. Without my regular optimization scripts, it would start to buckle under its own weight. By day 5, the texts came more frequently. "Tom from IT, the backup servers keep timing out." "Jennifer from sales, client portal is running slower than my grandma's first computer." Each message was another crack spreading through the foundation I'd built. I had friends inside, people who remembered what I'd done for them, for the company. They kept me updated through encrypted messages and occasional calls. By week 2, the panic had set in. "The algorithm is spitting out garbage data," Marcus whispered when we met at a bar. His eyes were bloodshot, dark circles underneath, betraying sleepless nights. "Sterling brought in some Accenture consultants, but they can't even understand your documentation. It's like trying to read Sanskrit." "That's because there isn't any documentation," I replied, taking a slow sip of my whiskey. "I built those systems as a living language. You have to speak it, feel it. You can't just read about it in a manual." Marcus leaned closer. "It's worse than you think. The Henderson account, our biggest. They're threatening to leave if we can't stabilize their data processing. Sterling's telling everyone you sabotaged the systems before you left." Rage flared in my chest, hot and sudden. "Sabotaged? I kept this company alive for 5 years." I slammed my glass down, whiskey sloshing onto the bar counter. The bartender looked over, concerned. "I know, man. We all know. But Sterling's got the board convinced that your unconventional methods made us vulnerable. He's saying we need to modernize or die." That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the hundreds of hours I'd poured into TechCore, the systems I'd nursed back to health at 3 a.m. when no one else could, the elegant solutions I'd crafted to problems everyone else had deemed unsolvable. On day 14, I received the call I'd been waiting for. It was David, my former CEO, his voice strained and desperate. "Ashton, I know I failed you. But please, the board's breathing down my neck. The clients are jumping ship. Sterling's running around trying to put out fires, but he doesn't even know where the water is." "What do you need, David?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "We need you back. Name your price, any title you want. Sterling he'll apologize. We just need you to—" I hung up, not because I didn't care, but because I'd made a decision. The next morning, I walked into the offices of Blue Tech Innovations, TechCore's biggest competitor. CEO Rachel Chen had been trying to recruit me for years. This time, I accepted. "Before I sign anything," I told her, "I need to tell you what I can bring to the table, and what's about to happen to TechCore." Rachel's eyebrows arched as I laid out my proposal. By the time I finished, her expression had shifted from curiosity to predatory satisfaction. "When do you start?" she asked. "I already have," I replied, turning my laptop to show her the shell script I'd written. "Their main server cluster will go into cascade failure during their big investor presentation tomorrow, unless someone who understands my systems is there to stop it." The irony was delicious. I'd built those systems to be resilient, to be forgiving. But every fortress has its weak points, and I knew exactly where TechCore's were. For 5 years, I'd been the only thing standing between those vulnerabilities and complete system collapse. Tomorrow morning, Jacob Sterling would finally understand what it meant to lose the ghost in the machine. Tomorrow morning, he would learn what happens when you fire the only person who knows how to keep your house from burning down. The morning of reckoning arrived with crystal clarity, not a cloud in the sky, as if the universe itself wanted to witness what was about to unfold. I'd positioned myself at a cafe directly across from TechCore's building, close enough to see the desperation on employees' faces as they rushed in for what they assumed would be their biggest client presentation of the year. At 9:47 a.m., exactly when I'd programmed it, the first cascade failure began. My phone buzzed with frantic messages. "Systems are down. Everything's crashing. Where the hell is Sterling?" Through the glass windows, I could see the chaos. People running between offices, phones pressed to ears, the unmistakable panic of a ship taking on water. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring each drop, each moment of vindication. By 10:30, the parking garage cleared out. The investors had left. TechCore's stock price had already dropped 7% and climbing. Then I saw him, Jacob Sterling, loosening his tie as he stumbled out of the building, looking like a man who'd just been told his world was ending. Because it was. I watched as he got into his Tesla and drove aimlessly around the block. When he pulled into the same cafe parking lot I was in, I knew the universe had a sense of humor. He didn't notice me as he slumped into a booth, head in his hands, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't understand," he was saying, loud enough for half the cafe to hear. "How could everything fail like this? We had redundancies, backups." A pause. "No, we can't call him. I won't. There has to be another way." That's when I stood up and walked directly to his table. His eyes widened in recognition, and something like hope flickered there before being extinguished by reality. "Having a rough morning, Jacob?" I asked, sliding into the seat across from him without invitation. His face cycled through emotions: shock, anger, resignation. You did this." "I did nothing. I just stopped doing everything." I leaned forward. "For 5 years, I held your company together with systems nobody else could understand. You called them sloppy, basement-developed Band-Aids. Remember?" Sterling's jaw clenched. "What do you want? Money? Your job back?" I laughed, a genuine sound that turned heads in the cafe. "I don't want anything from TechCore. I already have a job, a good one, with Blue Tech." The color drained from his face. "You wouldn't reveal your client list? Your security vulnerabilities? The fact that without me, your systems will be down for weeks, maybe months?" I smiled. "I already have. Rachel Chen is very interested in welcoming TechCore's abandoned clients to a more stable platform." Sterling's hands balled into fists on the table. For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing. Instead, he did something unexpected. He started to cry. Not sobbing, just tears rolling down his face as the weight of what he'd lost hit him. "I have a family," he whispered. 3 kids, a mortgage. This was supposed to be my legacy. "Then you should have built it on what matters. The people who make it work, not just the ones who look good in boardrooms," I said, standing up. "Here's what's going to happen. You'll spend the next month trying to rebuild basic functionality. You'll lose 60% of your client base. You'll be forced to resign to save face. And you? I'll be building something better. Something where the people who create value are valued." I paused at his table one last time. "You know the funny thing? If you'd taken 5 minutes to understand what I did, I might have taught you everything. But you were too busy seeing titles to see talent." That afternoon, I got a call from David. "Ashton, please. Sterling is gone. The board finally sees. We can't survive without you. I'm begging." "I know you can't," I replied softly. "That's why I documented everything before I left. It's all in the hidden folder on the main server, Phoenix Protocols. Tell your new chief engineer, whoever that is, to look there. It'll take them 6 months to understand it all, but it's enough to save the company." You're helping us?" "I'm not heartless, David. I'm not letting 5 years of work die because of one man's hubris. But TechCore, as I knew it, that's already gone." 6 months later, TechCore stabilized, barely. They lost their market leadership position, but survived as a mid-tier player. Jacob Sterling resigned quietly, taking a position at a small consulting firm. The board voted to reserve a seat for me permanently, just in case I ever wanted to return. I never did. Instead, I built something new. At Blue Tech, then at my own company, Ghost Systems, an ironic name that clients loved. I hired the best minds I'd worked with, created an environment where basement developed meant innovative, not inferior, where the people who understood the systems were the ones making the decisions. Sometimes, late at night, I still get calls. Former TechCore employees asking for advice with some code I wrote years ago. I always help. Because the truth is, revenge was never about destroying TechCore. It was about proving a point. In technology, like in life, you can't fire the foundation and expect the building to stand. And while Jacob Sterling learned that lesson the hard way, I learned something too. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so much better that your enemies can only watch from the sidelines, wondering what might have been. Today, when young developers ask me for advice, I tell them the same thing. Build yourself into the system. Become irreplaceable not through secrecy, but through excellence. And most importantly, never let anyone convince you that your value comes from a title on a door rather than the code that keeps the lights on. Because in the end, we're all just ghosts in the machine, until someone decides to flip the switch and find out who we really are.